Welcome to the Fit2Serve Physical Readiness course for tactical personnel. My name is Ashley Romiak, and I will be taking you through this presentation. Physical readiness. Your task today is to demonstrate an understanding of physical readiness on an individual level. Condition is given this PowerPoint, a virtual learning instructional video, and a virtual online environment. Learn the basics of tactical athlete physical fitness readiness. The standard. Upon completion of this presentation, complete the virtual learning module and score 70% or higher on the physical readiness quiz. Here are the learning objectives. This course is designed to enable personnel to do the following: to understand the importance of physical readiness, to understand the principles of frequency, intensity, time, type, volume, and progression, and to develop knowledge of different training methods for complete tactical fitness. We also hope that you can learn to promote safety and injury prevention. Physical readiness for the tactical athlete. So what is a tactical athlete? It's an individual who serves and protects others. They protect and serve their communities, cities, states, countries, themselves, and the person next to them against various threats. Tactical personnel, such as military and emergency responders, require physical readiness to respond to emergencies and physically demanding situations. They need to be able to do things like run, lift, drag, carry equipment, and handle high stress situations. Given that the tactical athletes are always operating in an in-season, they must maintain physical fitness at all times. So physical readiness is the ability to meet the physical demands of any combat or duty position, accomplish the mission, and continue to fight and win. Physical readiness is a critical component of their ability to perform their occupation effectively. Physical readiness is necessary to the individual, the unit, and the overall force's readiness. So physical readiness involves training and conditioning the body through exercise, such as strength training, cardiovascular workouts, and mobility drills. They also have to undergo specific assessments or tests to measure their readiness and identify areas of weakness that needs improvement. Ultimately, physical readiness is about being prepared for the various physical challenges and demands one may encounter in their occupation. Physical readiness will differ for various groups. Firefighters are not going to be the same as military, which is not going to be the same as law enforcement. It's based on occupational profile. So in order to maintain physical readiness, it is necessary for each person to regularly engage in structured exercise. The goal of this presentation is to expose you to the foundations of physical readiness. There's so much information out there, and not all of it is reliable. So today we're going over evidence-based practices for strength, power, endurance, aesthetics, functional training, as well as aerobic and anaerobic training and cardiovascular training. So first, let me ask, what are your goals? You have to consider the various tasks you need to be able to do for your job performance. Ask yourself, what is my goal and what is my desired outcome to be able to do in order to perform my job? The needs analysis for training needs you to consider what you need to be able to do, for how long, at what intensity, what equipment you need, and then analyze your strengths and weaknesses, take into consideration your injury status, and then complete that to understand the overall demands of your occupation. Exercise 101. Let's get down to the basics. I'm going to start with a quote by J.S. Skinner in 1993, who said, "The principles of training apply to everyone. There is no one program or set of programs that is best for everyone or even the same person over time as interests, needs, goals, and capabilities change." Adaptation happens when the body adjusts to the current environment. Adaptation means the body changes. It gets stronger, it gets faster, it gets bigger. So physical activity is a stimulus for adaptation, and there's a four-step process. So the four-step process includes the stimulus, which it's the training load. It's either stimulating, retraining, or detraining. Second is accommodation. Accommodation means the body is going to adapt to the same level of exercise and performance gains will decrease. So if you keep doing the same cardio at the same intensity for the same amount of time, you're going to plateau and you're not going to make the progress that you're aiming for. You also need to be specific. For example, the best way to improve to run is running. The best way to get better at swimming is swimming. Lastly, individualization. We have to keep in mind that every athlete is different and responds to differently to training demands. right? Not all individuals are going to respond similarly to a given training program. You have to take into consideration your relative fitness level, whether you're a beginner, advanced, or immediate, genetics, age, and physiology. In order to continually improve, we have to keep increasing the physical demands on our bodies. If we go out the gate too hard, too fast, we may overload our systems and get burned out or even injured. If our demand is not enough, we're not going to make any progress. We have to find that sweet spot. So as we dive into the components and the basics of fitness, the first thing we're going to talk about is strength. And this is exactly what it sounds like. When I talk about strength training, we're talking about getting stronger. Heavy weights are only useful when we can control them. So what is a heavy weight? Well, strength definition means the amount of force that a muscle or muscles can produce at a certain velocity. So to develop strength, you have to challenge your muscles to produce more force. Load would be around 85% or higher of your 1 rep max, and you would perform about 2 to 6 sets, 5 reps or less. The rest time for strength is much higher. You have to take about 2 to 4 minutes in between sets in order to replenish your energy to lift heavy the next set. It's better to focus on technique here in the strength world rather than just diving into heavy sets. Build the foundation and the skill and the form first. Then you're going to focus on your peak output rather than just trying to blast through reps and sets. For strength, the intention is to move the weight with good form rather than just completing the lift. We've all seen the person in the gym who is going to injure themselves because they're trying to lift a weight that is way too much for themselves. This is not healthy. Focus on how you lift it, not how much. Hypertrophy training. This is often mixed up with strength training. Hypertrophy is for growing bigger muscles, but not necessarily stronger. So this is, we think of the beach muscles, the bodybuilders, the aesthetics. So when I say think of the hair story, so let's think about a female and her hair is in a ponytail, and those are all the muscle fibers. If we want to increase strength, we're going to add hair extensions or a wig. And if we add more hair, right, the ponytail gets thicker. There's more muscle fibers. That's strength training. Hypertrophy would be you take that ponytail and you run your hands through it and fluff it up and give it some volume. We haven't increased the muscle fibers, but we've increased the size, right? It's bigger because we've teased it. That is hypertrophy. So hypertrophy grows bigger, not necessarily stronger. There's an increase in size, but not necessarily an increase in function. Developing a strong mind-muscle connection is one of the most critical aspects when we talk about hypertrophy. You have to focus on feeling the targeted muscle work, experiencing the pump, and then feeling sore. Training load here is a bit less. Where strength was 85% and above, this is 67 to 85% of your on-rep max. And people, you can perform anywhere from 3 to 5 sets, 8 to 30 reps, and the rest time is much less, of 45 to 60 seconds. Hypertrophy typically requires more rest days because you're typically more sore. Reps can be up to 30, which initially it was, people thought, up to 12 reps, but now science has shown that up to 30 reps, as long as you're within 1 to 2 reps of failure, is going to be great for hypertrophy. So again, anywhere from 8 to 30 reps, 3 to 5 sets, and focus on that mind muscle contraction. Do you feel it in your bicep if you're working in your bicep? Because if you feel it in your traps, you're doing it wrong. Power training. So power training focus is more on how quickly you can move a load or force. These are quick, powerful movements that produce high force. Think box jumps, overhead throws. What is the importance of power training? Well, your ability to react and generate force quickly is crucial to your overall function and safety. If you don't train to develop power, you will not be able to produce power. And when the time comes, you won't be able to respond quickly and appropriately. Another really cool thing about power training is it can help naturally increase your serum testosterone concentration and increase your production of human growth hormone. When it comes to power training, the greater the load, the slower the power. So load percentages here of your 1 rep max is going to be about 80 to 90. So kind of that's going to be the sweet spot, 3 to 5 sets and lower reps. So 3 to 5 reps, 2 to 5 minutes rest. Endurance training. So this is the muscle's ability to contract against a force for an extended period of time. 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, even running or any kind of consistent output of 20 minutes consistently can be beneficial for physical readiness for endurance training. So endurance training improves the heart's ability to pump blood. It can improve your mental health, sleep quality, and is actually a baseline for fatigue resistance. So if you find you get tired quickly, throwing in some endurance training into your program would be hugely beneficial. So when you are doing endurance training, you need to learn to master how your body feels. Like pay attention to what is contracting. Don't just do it to do it. Do it to get the execution right. So endurance training could be, like I said, marathon training or push-ups or sit-ups, but the load is relatively low. So it's 67% or less of your 1 rep max. Repetitions are 15 or more, 2 to 3 sets, and the rest time is much less. So we briefly went over strength, power, hypertrophy, and endurance. But here's just a chart. You can take a screenshot of it or save it to see, okay, strength, less than or equal to 6 reps. I got to perform 2 to 6 sets, rest 2 to 5 minutes, and my intensity is less than or equal to 85% of my 1 rep max. Power, doing a single effort of that means you're just doing 1 lift, or multi-effort, you're doing 2 or 3 lifts in that training program. Hypertrophy and endurance. Very useful chart. Again, take a picture of it, get to know it. It will help you with your training and programming. Here's an example of a training load chart to predict your 1 rep max. So if you know how much you lift at 8 reps, you can kind of go down the chart and see what your predicted 1 rep max would be. It's not necessary to test your 1 rep max out for every lift to figure out your rep scheme. This chart can be useful if you don't know for strength and power and hypertrophy to kind of go through, see where you're at, and then predict, and then use your 85% or less, 67% or less weights based on this chart. Okay, so now we went over a little bit of strength training, strength, power, hypertrophy, endurance for muscle building. But each one of those targets a different muscle fiber. Did you know you have different muscle fibers inside that make up your muscles? Our muscles are composed of different fibers, and each one has its own unique characteristics, such as color and contractile speed. So let me introduce you to the first one, which is type 1, which is slow twitch. This muscle fiber is highly resistant to fatigue. This muscle is good for things such as marathons, distance running, swimming, cycling, power walking. These muscle fibers support aerobic activities. They use fat as fuel. So here's type 2A muscle fiber. So this is a fast twitch, intermediate resistance to fatigue. So it's not going to burn out super quick, but you're not going to be able to last a super long time with this one. It is a mix of anaerobic and aerobic. It's great for powerlifting, for sprinting, jumping, agility, strength days. Weightlifting, it uses a blend of fats and carbs to fuel as its energy source. And this one is a great blend for the tactical population because you have a little bit of both. The one thing I do want to note here is age causes a loss you're going to lose muscle mass as you age. And one of the things is you're going to lose first is a decline in fast twitch fibers, and you'll increase slow twitch fibers. So it is so important for you to continue your resistance weight training to offset this decline so you can keep your type 2A muscle fibers. Type 2B muscle fibers, the fast and furious. So this is very fast twitch and has a low resistance to fatigue, which means it's going to burn out quick. This would be your very quick, hard sprint. And this one, the only fuel source it uses is carbohydrates. This is your short, quick burst of energy, right? You're going to be quick and powerful, but it's going to burn out through your tank quickly. And you can see here is kind of what the muscle fibers look like. You have your type 1, and then type 2 and type 2B. You have A and then B. You can see how just the difference in how they look in your body if you were to look at them under a microscope. Speed and agility. Think of the tasks that you may encounter on your job. Tasks as obstacle navigation during a chase, tackling and grappling suspects during restraints, seeking cover from gunfire, crawling and searching for victims in a burning building. The strength and conditioning training program you have needs to be able to meet the demands of any occupational task and hazard. And speed and agility is necessary. So speed is the time required to cover a certain distance. Think of sprinting, 15 seconds or less. Minimum of 2 times per week, or based on your goals, you can work on speed stuff. This one is longer rest periods, so every 1 to 10, 1 to 20 work ratio. So if you perform 10 seconds of sprint work, you need to do 100 seconds of rest. This is best performed when your neurological system is less fatigued, meaning you should be kind of fresh, ready to train hard. If you are doing sprint work, don't exceed 600 meters of work per session unless you're a super advanced athlete. So some things when we're going to talk about speed, I'm going to teach you some basic things of running and sprinting. I want you to think head and spine neutral. So no excessive rotating back and no side to side motion. Relax the faces, the muscles in your face, your neck and shoulders. I always say keep your shoulders away from your ears, chest up, and think of landing softer with a shorter stride. One thing that I was always taught for the arm swing is think eye socket to hip pocket. So when you're swinging your arms, they're not coming across your chest. They're going all the way from your eye socket down to your hip pocket. And as you're sprinting, it's as you're falling forward and you just keep catching yourself. The last thing that I want to touch on when it comes to speed training is the longer you stride, the slower you go. Elite runners have a much higher stride frequency and shorter stride length. You need to aim to have your feet land under your hips. So agility. Agility is a change of direction with a reactive component. You need to have some dynamic flexibility and range of motion and coordination between all limbs. Dynamic balance is the key in agility, and if you lack being able to balance and move, I would say try some yoga. Yoga is great at dynamic balancing movements. Agility, you also need the ability to accelerate, stop, and then start again. So if you're thinking about, you're chasing someone or whatever your job is that needs some agility, where you have to run, stop, go to the right, go to the left, accelerate again. You have to train that in order to improve, right? Like we talked in the beginning, specificity. Be specific in your training. If you're not good with agility, practice it. Mobility and flexibility. So mobility is the ability of the joint and the tendons to move through their entire range of motion. Everyone has different mobility as we are all built different and our joints have different ranges of motions. When we talk about flexibility, that pertains to the muscles. You can be both immobile and non-flexible. You can also be mobile and not flexible. So you have good mobility, but not flexibility. And you can be flexible with poor mobility. By improving your mobility around your joints through dynamic movements, you can notice you'll have fewer injuries, you'll have improved posture, and overall sense of well-being. Both are needed to generate efficient and effective movements. I challenge you at some point, you can do it now, pause the video, or at some point later today, try to see if you can balance on one leg for 30 seconds. And if you can do that, try it with your eyes closed. Try it with your arms overhead. Balance training is so important. We're only as strong as our weakest link. Balance training helps improve our body's just awareness in space. It helps with stabilization in our joints, muscular strength, and support. It helps us control with coordination and activates deeper muscles that support our bigger movements. It's essential for all athletes. So if you're not good at balancing, yoga is a great way to incorporate functional balance movements. There's one-legged balances such as in the picture of the tree pose or stork pose. You could do one-arm balances such as side plank. All of these will help create stability and strength in the joints and in the muscles so that when you do the bigger movements, you're not going to get injured and you're going to be a well-oiled operating machine. Functional fitness is called functional because it's focused on the main movement patterns that you use as a first responder or tactical athlete that are parallel to real life movements and situations such as pushing and pulling, hinging, squatting, lunging, rotating, climbing, stopping, instead of isolated movements like doing a bicep curl. So functional fitness is more practical, useful, and performance based. It's a concept which has little to do with aesthetics. It's all about movement that can be transferred over to your job and your duty. The whole body's functionality is when the body we work when we work at one unit as one unit, we work at our best. The act of body armor or packs for long periods of time while under stressful conditions requires the body to work as one. So functional fitness will help with that. Benefits of doing some functional fitness in everyday life activities: you get greater muscle memory, improved posture, improved motor function, and reduced injury. Incorporating various exercises such as carries, drags, all those that you'd probably do and know that you need to train, um, helps also reduce overuse in the same movement pattern. So these are great to sprinkle in with other lifts in the off season. The dreaded cardio topic. When it comes to cardiovascular training, I find that everyone wants to lift weights, but no one really wants to do cardio. Perhaps perhaps me explaining this to you and you can better understand the importance will change your mind, but maintaining an optimal cardiovascular system will not only overall enhance your well-being and health, but also sets your body up with a strong foundation to endure longer tasks. When you perform some form of cardiovascular training, you will be able to perform better, such as stair climbing. Think about 9/11 when they had to climb 110 flights of stairs, searching for victims, and or if you're on an extended foot chase or dragging multiple victims to a safe place. These all require efficient use of your heart and lungs. If you can no longer perform because your heart and lungs have been maxed out, you can no longer perform your duty. So cardiovascular fitness is a very necessary evil, so to say. When you have an efficient, also want to tell you this. So when you have an efficient heart and lungs, you actually save your heart and lungs work over time, every hour, every minute, every day. So the average, US person's heart rate is 80 beats per minute. The resting heart rate, 80 beats per minute for average. If you perform cardiovascular training and you bring yours down to 70 beats per minute, that's 10 beats per minute of work less per minute. And when you think, okay, 10 beats per minute, but in a day, that's 14,400 beats in a day that your heart didn't do extra. Over a year, that's over 5 million beats. So you're only going to add years to your life, longevity to yourself if you train cardiovascular system. Okay, so when it comes to cardio, most of the time I say personal preference should be okay for adherence, but specific training should not be overlooked because there are some things such as that HIIT training or sprinting, things like that, that you're going to need to do to be able to perform your job. Um, Definitely recommend doing various training modes to reduce overall usage. So if you're a runner, you constantly run, throw in some swimming there to give your joints a break from the pounding. The Cardiovascular training helps with performance, it safeguards against injury, and it just sets you up for success with your baseline of heart and lung function, right? Because that's our lifeline. So when it comes to cardiovascular training, the VO2 max test is the highest is the kind of gold standard test to see where your cardiovascular fitness is, and it tests the highest amount of oxygen that can be taken in and used during exercise. When it comes to kind of understanding how intense should I do my cardio, we're going to go over some things such as heart rate training, RPE scale, and talk test, so that you kind of have different options to gauge how intense you're exercising and if it's right for you and what your goals are. Slide, yes, is kind of heart rate zones. But even before that, I want to first introduce you to the talk test, which is a very simple measure for intensity. Basically, if you're doing moderate level intensity cardio, you can talk. but you wouldn't be able to sing during that. So that's how you know you're doing kind of moderate level, is you can talk, but you can't sing. If you're doing vigorous intensity, you would not be able to say more than a few words without pausing for a breath. So the more the intense the exercise, the more oxygen is consumed. So if you want to, you're like, hey, today I'm going to do some vigorous, you shouldn't be able to say more than a few words. If you're going for kind of just a moderate, slow, then you can talk, but you can't sing. So it comes to heart rate training, right? So heart rate is having, the lower the heart rate saves you work over time. I'm sure you might have heard of zones. If not, let me introduce you, like heart rate zones, zone 1 through 5. Zone 1 is typically type 1 muscle fibers. We talked about is that slow, steady endurance. It's aerobic based, fat burning. Type 2, right? So on the chart, you can see like zone 1, your resting heart rate is low and it feels easy peasy. You could do this for hours. It's good for fat burning and warm up kind of recovery. That's the intensity you should be at. Zone 2, right, is a little more intense. Um, it it feels like your breathing is heavier, fairly comfortable. It's good for fat burning and endurance. This zone here is good for strength leads and physical readiness improvement. Zone 3 has mixed adaptations, so you're gonna go some aerobic adaptations and anaerobic. Breathing is heavy. You're working hard. It's interval training, hit, cardio, exercise tolerance. You're up to 79% of your max heart rate. Then zones 4 through 5. This is when you're doing some serious work. You're using those type 2 muscle fibers. You're going hard, but not for a long period of time. Zone 4, right? You're almost at 90% of your max heart rate that you can handle. You're winded, but you're pushing hard. It's good for like conditioning and speed work, as we talked about earlier. And then zone 5 is 90 plus. You might even hit your max heart rate. You can barely catch your breath. It's good for the VO2 training, conditionings, super high intensity. As the heart rate goes up, there's also important to realize that to see how quickly it can come back down. So if you do monitor your heart rate, check it at 30 seconds, 60 and 90, 1 to 3 minutes after you performed, and see if it came down super fast or not. Lastly, if you want to kind of figure out your max heart rate, you take 220 minus your age, right? So if you're 20 years old, 220 minus 20 would be 200. And then I take that 200 and I multiply it by the 50% to 59%. And that's kind of my estimated heart rate zone for zone 1. And I could do that for all zones and kind of have an idea of what my heart rate training zones would be. So in order to improve your cardiovascular health, you should try to push to reach your max heart rate once a week, even if it's just 2 to 3 seconds. Once a week, get to that max heart rate doing the 220 minus your age and just touch it, right? And then you can add 1 to 2 seconds every couple weeks to progressively lead you to maybe 10 seconds of staying at max heart rate, which is going to lead to adaptations and able to kind of just perform max exertion in high stretch situations, and that's going to lead to improved health. So here's the RPE scale, right? So if you don't want to figure out your max rate, this is another one. You have the talk test, you have your heart rate zones, and then we have RPE scale, which is rate of perceived exertion. So as you can see, 1 is very light activity, 2 to 3 light, then we go moderate, vigorous. 10 would be max effort. Again, that's almost impossible. It feels like it's impossible to keep going. You're completely out of breath. So these are just ways and tools you can use to know if you're training in the zone that you need to for that given time period. So we talked about training, we talked about cardiovascular, right? You're hitting it hard, you're trying to be the best you can be. What happens? Injury and overtraining is a possibility. Injuries are a way of life for most. The aim of training should be to promote athletic development to enhance performance. You need to focus on the whole body rather than individual components, but injuries happen. And examples of, there's some things about injury, such, non-modifiable risk factors such as age and gender. There's certain ages and genders that are just more susceptible to injury, but there are modifiable risk factors, which means things you can do to prevent injuries. So let's talk. So that some of them are going to be your training load, right? Don't go 100% all day, every day. Have proper footwear. and have a well-rounded physical fitness program where you have, strength days, agility days, rest days, active rest days. You have to use variation, which is called the variation principle, when you kind of have a little bit of everything in your training program. Over the course of your training cycle, vary the loads and intensities. Change the exercises. Don't stick with the same thing the same time every time. And this, of course, is also going to help shake up any boring routines. Um, so lack of general fitness is a big piece of the injury puzzle. If you don't have a good foundation in physical fitness, you're going to be more likely to be injured, as well as overuse. Again, if you keep running and running and running and don't do anything else, you're probably going to get shin splints, right? So these are things you have to take into account. Like, can I do better? Ask yourself that when you're looking at your daily program and what you want to accomplish. Am I doing this right? So, injury prevention. Musculoskeletal injuries, which are injuries or disorders to the muscles, the tendons, the joints, the discs, are a significant issue for the population, for athletic population and tactical athletes. I mean, if you look down below, the first responders, these are the number one cause for ER visits. We did just go over the non-modifiable risk factors such as age and gender, and modifiable such as footwear, well-rounded program, training load. You'll also need to take in consideration that you need to incorporate exercises that induce a full range of motion through all the joints. I mean, everything we've gone over up to this point, as long as you follow what the basic parameters and not overuse, overtrain, lift heavy all the time, you're gonna have you're gonna set yourself up for success on a little bit of for injury prevention. Okay, injury prevention. Let's talk about some common injuries that are seen with this population. So shin splints and IT band syndrome was one of the things that when I was in the army we saw all the time. And a shin splint is pretty much caused by overuse. And one of the ways to kind of overcome this is learn how to run. Most of the time, you go up to somebody and you say, "How would you describe your run?" They would say, "Well, I just go out and run." And as I mentioned, when you're talking about speed work and agility, there is a way to run. There is proper form. Remember, landing on the midfoot versus the heel. If you're a heel striker when you run, you're constantly applying the brake, and that's eventually going to cause an injury over time. Running is a series of falling forward and catching yourself. Um, ease into training on different surfaces. You can also go to a running store, get your gait analyzed, and then get shoes that better fit you. When you are running, only increase your training volume for running 10, no more than 15% each week. Don't skip your warm up or cool down. And don't train through pain. Pain is your body signaling that something is wrong. If you have chronic pain, don't just take pain reliever, seek medical attention. If you are going to be running in boots for your job, slowly transition and train one time a week in your boots. And then a month later, add a day and build up until you're training in your boots and you've tolerated it. But just don't go out full beast mode and train in your boots, because you're going to get an injury. IT band syndrome. It's mostly caused from running, usually a pain that you'll feel on the outside of your knee. It's good. You can foam roll it. You can stretch it. And you can also do other activities. Like I said, if you run, then try swimming to take some of that high impact off of your legs. Patellar tendonitis is another common one. This is pain that's usually between your kneecap where the tendon attaches to your shin bone. And this is very common in jumping. One of the things you could do to overcome this and avoid this is strengthen the muscles around your knees, improve your movement technique, since everybody's recording themselves in the gym. If you're recording yourself, then also analyze your movement pattern and see where you can improve. Lower back pain, right? We've all had lower back pain at some point in time. So our training will eventually kind of biomechanically, our form will break down. And most of the time when that happens, our lower back takes the hit. So for example, if you're doing a heavy barbell back squat and you can't keep integrity and your hips locked in and they go to the bottom of the squat and they kind of scoop under, they wink under, your lower back, your lumbar is going to take that load of the weight on the squat bar, and those muscles were never never supposed to maintain and be able to support that kind of weight directly. So it's all about also learning yourself and your body and good movement technique. You also you need to balance, strengthen your core and always pay attention to how you move. Ankle sprains, another common one, right? So when we look at ankle sprains, that's kind of a rolling or twisting of the ankle. A way to strengthen the ankles is with exercise such as balancing, which improves flexibility and mobility. So we've already covered this, right? Again, I'm going to say try yoga. There's yoga for tactical athletes that will help directly strengthen your weak points. And a strong core. A strong core can help you with injury prevention, like your abs, your pelvic floor, your oblique muscles. All things are there to support your spine and keep everything in a neutral, engaged position. For example, push-ups. They're commonly done wrong, and this can lead to injury. When you have insufficient, engagement of the core, you have that dip in your lower back, and you're doing push-ups, and eventually something's gonna hurt. So injury prevention, right? We don't want to get injured from, poor footwear choice or poor movement mechanics. But what about overtraining, right? That imposes an injury demand on our body. So if you think of your body as, it's a bank of energy, right? And you want your bank to be full of money, and you want your body to be full of energy. And each workout you do has a cost to it. When you do a super intense workout, right, you're making a big withdrawal from your energy bank, right? You're taking a lot of money out of the bank, a lot of energy. And if you keep doing these back-to-back intense workouts, you're going to empty all the money and energy out of your bank. And eventually, you're going to be left with overdraft fees. But these overdraft fees are going to come in the form of overtraining, right? So the way you prevent this from happening is adding a rest day, right? Rest days are you depositing energy funds back into the bank. Another way that we're going to get into is, deposit money as sleep, food, all of this stuff adds funds to your energy bank. So overtraining, what is this? Overreaching, right? That's like the first one, which means excessive training that leads to short-term decrease in performance. So you're taking some money, some energy out of your energy bank, and your bank account's starting to get low, right? Then we do non-functional overreaching, right? So you keep taking those energy funds, you keep increasing your training, you're not doing any recovery, your performance is going to be decreased for weeks up to months. So your bank is empty for weeks or months, and you're barely getting by because you have no funds to withdraw from. And then overtraining symptom, that means you have excessive exercise, no rest or recovery, your energy bank, you have now overdrafted, and you are rock bottom, like you don't have nothing left in the tank. So how do you know if you're overtraining? Well, as you can see here, some symptoms include, if you do monitor your heart rate, you have an increase in resting heart rate. So if you have, a smart device that you monitor your heart rate and you notice it's up, and it's, your resting heart rate is 80 and lately it's been 90 or 92, that's a sign or symptom. You're not doing as well in your exercises for lifts, like you just don't have that strength or that oomph that you thought you did. You have a change in mood. Most of the time they're a little grumpy, a little irritable, tired, unusual fatigue, you're not sleeping well. These are all symptoms of overtraining. It's just you running your battery on low, and the primary treatment is rest. Rest is so important. It's just as important as your training days. And this is one of the misconceptions that I really want to stress in this presentation, is how important rest is. Some people have such a hard time taking a rest day, but rest days are your best days, right? That's when your body recovers and you get to go stronger from the workout, right? You're not getting stronger when you're actually in the gym hitting it hard every single day because you're breaking the muscles down. It's when you rest that they rebuild and become stronger. When it comes to recovery and rest days, right? As I said, this is just as important as training. I want you to ask yourself this. If you're like, I don't know if I should rest or not, ask yourself this question. If I do this activity, will I feel invigorated when I'm done, or will I feel tired? If you answered like, hey, if I do this activity, I'm going to feel completely wiped, then you should probably take a rest day. How do you incorporate a rest day? Well, Being able to manage your stress in and out of the gym is a huge part. When you incorporate them, just trust your feelings and pay attention to the signals in your body. If again you feel like, hey, if I go to the gym today, I'm gonna feel like crap. Take the rest day. Listen to your body. Because training a sore muscle, it is possible, but it needs to be done with caution, right? So if you're sore and you think it'd make you even just worse and wrecked, if the soreness is severe, you have to rest that area and even the whole body. It's better to get rest and get back in and be stronger than it is to overdo it and then be out for months or weeks. There are different also, right? So if you're like, how do I incorporate them? I mean, you can incorporate a rest day, active rest day. You can do massage. You can do compression. There's hot and cold therapies. There's fascial training. All these things we're gonna touch upon here in this next segment. Rest days. We're going to get into this box breathing method here in a moment. But recommendation is about 2 days between strength days of the same muscle group. There are technology apps out there that are a great resource that can tell you like, hey, you need to take a rest today. Your training load is high or low. But your body doesn't get better in the gym. It improves when we rest. So when we're talking about active recovery days and these different methods like box breathing and cold and hot therapy and massage, um, these are all things you can do because for some of us, it's really hard to take that rest day. So what do you do if you're too tired to sort of work out, but laying down and binge watching TV, not necessarily the best recovery tool, right? So active recovery can be a leisure walk, yoga, stretching, low intensity, something to get the blood moving. For the hot therapy, saunas. Saunas can be a helpful recovery tool by increasing blood flows. They are not a replacement for exercise or weight loss. And please avoid working out in the sauna. And whatever water you lose in the sauna should be replaced. So if you are doing sauna, make sure you're monitoring your hydration and your water input. And then the opposite, which was cold therapy, right? You can do cold showers. That's a great recovery tool. I will say if you're doing like any cryo or cold water immersion, cold plunges, avoid doing them 4 to 6 hours post strength or hypertrophy workout. But if you're doing some kind of endurance or HIIT, you can do those directly. You can do that cold water immersion directly after that workout. Foam rolling. This is that fascial kind of technique that I mentioned on the previous slide. Foam rolling, right? This is great to improve flexibility, movement efficiency, and pain reduction. So if it feels good for you, incorporate it. For some, massage is a great recovery tool, right? Just kind of being in that quiet kind of spa-like atmosphere can just help our minds and bodies just open up and feel better. Again, if that's what works for you, then no shame in that. Just go and get yourself a massage. And here I want to talk about the box breathing method, right? So structured breathing exercises can help us boost the recovery process, and it also helps us maximize the results after an intense workout. They can, crazy to think, but doing different breathing techniques can help reduce muscle soreness, help regulate your nervous system. So if you're very anxious and like in this fight or flight response, it can bring you down into that kind of like relax and chill mode and allow you to perform at your highest method. So box breathing, this is this is an ancient pranayama, which means breath work and Ayurvedic form of, it originated in India. The box breathing method is also used by Navy SEALs. It heightens cognitive performance. It deactivates that flight or flight response. So your nervous system, when it's very, up and amped, it brings you down, it decreases the stress and improves your thinking and reasoning. And I highly recommend you try this. Even if you're sitting in traffic and you find yourself getting very worked up, do this after workout, do this in traffic. And the reason why it's called box is because you're breathing in a box shape, right? So you're breathing in for a count of 4, you're holding at the top for a count of 4, you're exhaling for 4, and then you're holding again for 4. And you're repeating this for about, anyway, 4 to 6 cycles, a minute, whatever works for you. But you will notice a just a relaxation, and this is great on your rest days if you're very like, oh my goodness, I have to do something, like I can't believe I'm not at the gym. Do some box breathing. As we roll into the conclusion and wrap up, I do want to bring one other topic up about breath work and about nasal breathing. So I want you to pay attention right now. Are you breathing with your mouth open, in and out through your mouth, or are you breathing through your nose? So, nose breathing, right? If you can, try to keep each breath in through your nose as you're sitting here, out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. A lot of us are mouth breathers and we don't even realize it, but our noses were designed for the in breath. The only time that mouth breathing is you can't avoid it is during that really high intensity exercises. We're not able to pull in the oxygen through our noses. But man, nose nasal breathing, you'll feel better. Random fact, the more chronically you breathe through your mouth, your teeth will shift over time. So if you don't want crooked teeth later on in life, breathe through your nose. 80, 85 to 90. So when you're doing 85 to 95% max effort, you're definitely going to be doing mouth breathing. But other than that, the benefits of nasal breathing, it helps you relax. It lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, helps you cope with, PTSD and like breathing techniques, like in through the nose, like box breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. It improves your body's ability to tolerate exercise intensity. Man, there's so many benefits to nasal breathing. So, in conclusion, remember that training is a slow and steady process, right? You have to kind of look at what your job requires and say, okay, strength. Do I need to do strength, power, hypertrophy, endurance, and sprinkle in, form your training program around what you need to do, and then if you have to do some speed work and agility, make it fun, right? Give yourself time to progress. Give yourself permission to have fun. You can, work out with friends, support each other with a positive attitude and mindset. It's there's so many things when it comes to training that you can do, and there's so many resources out there. This was just to give you a basic foundation to kind of expose you to the evidence-based training protocols, right? We talked about the different muscle fiber types, what energy system they used. So the more you know, the better you can do. And that concludes this physical readiness for the tactical population. I hope you enjoyed it. And next up will be sleep and nutrition. Don't forget to check out the post-course quiz in order to get credit for completion of this course.